What is the best display of wealth you've ever seen? That I've ever witnessed in person? I was a chef in a fancy boutique hotel here in New Zealand, and we used to get the famous and wealthy staying with us. Cliff Richard, Serge Tankian, Nancy Cartwright are a few guests that I was lucky enough to meet. However, the wealth thing. We had a sheikh of an oil country. Well, I'm assumed he was a sheikh. Just an Arabian dude rocking the flowing robes and hat, came over to the pass and complimented us on the meal and asked how many staff in the kitchen. Including kitchen hands and wait staff, it was something like 12 or 13. The guy just peels off that amount of hundy notes and gives everyone a $100 tip. Pretty cool and nothing as obnoxious as gold Ferraris or anything. I was lucky enough to attend a very nice private school that taught kids from JK, junior kindergarten, through 12th grade with tuition about $20k per year. A classmate of mine's family, after having paid the way for their 4 kids to go through all 13 grades, also paid full tuition every year for their housekeeper's 5 children to go through the same school. My grandfather was a landscaper for one of the wealthiest families in his town. All along the years they were always very generous, giving him large Christmas bonuses and extra money during the year for reasons like they lived the rich hue of the roses that year. At age 86, I know. Grandpa saw a doctor for the first time and was told he had to stop working. All the bending over caused eye problems. Family continued to pay him his weekly salary and maintained his health insurance until he died, at 100. They then sent $20,000 to the funeral home to defray some of the costs. Mom and I would occasionally go up there when he was working. And if she was home, the matriarch would come out and sit with us. And have us served iced tea with mint and the most delicious cookies. Just really nice folks. Edited to add. Holy cow. I didn't expect so many people to respond. Second edit. When you bend over for extended periods, hours each day for decades, pressure begins to build in your brain. In his case, behind the optic nerve. This could lead to blindness. I was doing the heating service at a customer's house. It was a nice sized house. There was a furnace in the garage that heated the room above. I walked into the garage and there were thousands of wrapped gifts sitting in neat little stacks on skids all over. I guess the homeowner saw the look of astonishment on my face. They go to discount stores and will buy toys and housewares and give them to needy people for Christmas. The skids all were labeled who the gift was for. Girl age 1-3. Boy age 5-7. Adult. Things like that. They do it all on their own. A friend of mine had a very wealthy uncle. He passed recently. That went back to the very poor city he was raised in Bangladesh and funded and built a library for the people there. That has always been such a cool story me. Edit. I was working for a pretty big company in the 2/3 RD level support. One day we were discussing a new problem we recently discovered and started to debug the code, and there is this guy that showed up from time to time. That just came in and tried to help us whenever he could. I was working there for around a year and I knew him by name. But quickly realized that he was really fking smart and knew a lot about the devices and software we sold. He drove a 1990s BMW and always wore jeans plus shirt. Turns out he is the co-founder of the company. And multiple millionaire heavy. He stepped out of the company and only works for fun. This was before I was born, but the cost of setting up my father's business was apparently paid for by a wealthy older woman who simply gifted him the hundreds of thousands of dollars he needed. Apparently she also told him she would back him if it took a while to get things moving business-wise, which fortunately it didn't. The woman paid for a lease on a very impressive space smack in the middle of the most expensive area of downtown Chicago. Furnished the entire place. Sent him several paintings from a prominent artist that she had commissioned specifically for him. Sotheby's apparently values them at about $75k at auction each. And on top of all that, remained a paying client of the business until the day she died. She was one of the few genuinely happy rich people I've ever met. On a side note, she also taught me some Yiddish. Great lady. This story may not apply here, but it's still a good story. I work with a guy who comes from money. Like, I vacation at my family's island sort of money. He only works there because his dad told him he needed to get a job and learn life skills. He has a I seriously don't need this job sort of demeanor, and I really kind of hated him for the first year he worked there. Anyway, every couple of months a few of the people I work with do these volunteer events. It's always different. Going to the hospital to read to sick kids. Making breakfast for injured vets. That sort of thing. I never went to one until a friend from work encouraged me to do so. Come to find out, the kid made of money goes to every single one. And not only goes, is really energetic and excited about it. When my cousin had cancer, she made friends with the girl she shared a room with in the hospital, who was dying and had no living relatives. Her friend was going to have to transfer to the TS hospital in our area because she had run out of money. My millionaire uncle found out about this when he was visiting my cousin, and paid her friend's medical bills through on the spot in 2 phone calls. Then he gave her his number to make sure she called the next time her bills were due. I have 2 from my time in ultra high net worth wealth management. 1. A family worth $865. 000. 000 drove 5-year-old Toyotas. Lived in a normal house and thought Red Lobster was a fancy dinner. I will never forget their 10-year-old daughter whispering about how expensive a Red Lobster menu was, and asking if she could order whatever she liked. That little girl has a $200. 000 trust fund. 2. A young woman who inherited roughly $220. 000 uses her monthly $750. 000 allowance to operate an animal shelter. All kinds of animals have huge open spaces to play with each other and other kinds of animals if they are hardy enough. They have medical care and great food. Everything they need. The place is literally like a dream. She invites all the local schools to bring their kids to play and receive education on the animals. All of this entirely on her dime. Both stories are awesome for different reasons. Bill Gates is doing a hell of a job trying to get rid of a bunch of diseases worldwide. My dad inherited about $250,000 in 1950. That was a lot of money then. Because he had no need for money. He drove a bus. One day a black man came on the bus, claiming he couldn't get loan on a house because as soon as the banks found out he was black, he was turned down. My dad called the banks, asked for loans, and then told them he was black, and was turned down at once. Over the phone, my dad loaned the man $10. 000 to buy a house. Interest free. I went to a friend's wedding once. It was held at the home of his fiance's friend, a dot-com billionaire who got out before the tech bubble burst. Multi-million-dollar house in a gated community. Famous people as neighbors. 100 wedding guests had dinner on his patio. I was talking to the groom around sundown, and there was this worker going through and cleaning the tables like a pro. I mean, every glass and bottle was swept up swiftly and efficiently. I said, wow. That guy is really good, and my friend said, yeah. He's the owner. Billionaire was cleaning up after us. A French footballer bought an accordion factory that was otherwise going out of business. Just like that. He liked it, so he saved it. Also style points for being French and buying an accordion factory. George Lucas is going to spend over $100 million to build affordable housing in an effort to off his neighbors who blocked him from building a studio. When a Brazilian billionaire announced he wanted to bury his $1 million Bentley, saying he wanted to drive in his afterlife but actually had a plot twist of a nice message to everyone. It created a lot of buzz as expected, with plenty of criticism on his show of wealth. And then at the actual ceremony he said this: "People condemn me because I wanted to bury $1 million Bentley. In fact, most people bury something a lot more valuable than my car." Scarpa said during a speech at the ceremony. They bury hearts, livers, lungs, eyes, kidneys. This is absurd. So many people waiting for a transplant and you will bury your healthy organs that will save so many lives. Dolly Parton giving $1,000 a month to homeless victims of the TN fires. I knew this rich Arab guy. A prince in the literal sense. He wasn't a dick. He never flaunted his wealth, just a normal guy. After about a year of knowing him, he was in my friend circle. We were pretty close friends. Out of nowhere, he invites us all to France. An all-inclusive trip where we stayed in a 5-star hotel, explored Paris, and went on a road trip to nearly every other place in France we could reasonably go to in 2 weeks. Nobody but him paid a single franc. He bought us first-class tickets. Wouldn't let us pay at all the fancy-ass restaurants we went to. Best vacation I've ever gone in my life. Thousands upon thousands of people alive in Africa who otherwise wouldn't be. Bill Gates. I once gilded Bill Gates. Full stop. Reddit gold costs $4 a month. Bill Gates with 6% interest on his 82.8 BN makes about $414 million per month. Which means he can gild the 14 million Redditors in a month and still have $400 million earned in that month. For TD. That's one Trump per 9 months. Full stop. Edit. Underestimated Bill Gates' earnings. A football players in my hometown shortly after he retired would get his entourage together on Black Friday and literally buy all of the merchandise at a local Toys R Us in Circuit City and donate all of the stuff to charity. My cousin was working at the Circuit City and called me after the first time this happened because he was so excited. Cart after cart went through the lines at the checkout and ended up in a series of moving vans. To this day I don't think it's ever made the news or anything because this particular player was very shy and hated the publicity. But he grew up dirt poor and would tell his mother that if he ever made it big that this was his dream. I have always loved that story. And always told myself that if I was that level of wealthy I would do the exact same thing. Because 13-year-old me thought that this guy was the coolest. You mean like giving gold to posts? I will thank nobody. Says it. I still refuse. My brother had a son at 18. His girlfriend was 22. They had a lot of financial problems. Their son kind of lives a rough life. He's 8 now but when he was about 4. They wanted to enroll him in preschool but it was just too much money. My mom babysits the kid a lot and once was shopping at Target for him to get a backpack. This was before they knew the cost. While shopping, my mom met a woman in the store and they just started talking about him. My mom mentioned they were getting him a backpack for preschool but it wasn't certain because of the price. The woman then ended up giving my mom $500 and her number. She offered to pay for his preschooling and any school supplies he needed. Such a wonderful woman. Guy I know went to his friend's house and he saw a horse on the property. He asked what the horse's name was. And his friend didn't know. You gotta own a lot of stuff to have a horse that doesn't have a name. You know. I've been through the desert on a horse with no name. It felt good to get out of the rain. My millionaire grandma was paying for college for all her grandkids. I started failing. So she started paying for a local student to go instead of me. She was an old southern white lady. And according to my parents the local student was black. If that matters. No resentment at all on my part. It made me take my education seriously. And I ended up with a PhD from a great institution. Don't know what happened to the local kid. But I hope it helped him too. I'm sorry but this one made me actually laugh out loud. I imagine her like he's what? Failing? Well. Him. I'll just adopt a winner instead. I remember that. When I was in high school. My school was raising money to help build a school in a village in Malawi. I casually mentioned it to my parents. But didn't really expect anything because they never really helped me with school fundraising projects. However, my mom was a legal secretary and, for one reason or another, mentioned it to her boss, a lawyer. Her boss told her that one of his clients, a business owner, was originally from Malawi, and then mentioned the project to said client. This gentleman ended up donating quite a large sum of money towards the project. Because my homeroom class inevitably ended up raising the most money, we got a free pizza lunch. Probably too late to be seen, but every year at Christmas, my wealthy grandfather gives everyone in the family, 27 of us, $100 that we aren't allowed to spend on ourselves or each other. We have to spend it on someone in need or use it to help improve the community. On Christmas Day we all go around and tell everyone what we did with ours. This is on top of the thousands of dollars he is already spending on everyone's gifts. My friend's mom's lawyer boss took us and his other assistant, with her kid and friend, to go shred the mountains in Colorado. He paid for everything. Plane ride, snowboard renting, Oakley goggles, foods, you name it. I had the pleasure to go twice and absolutely love snowboarding since SSX3 on my PS2. He has a really nice house right next to the mountain, with a wide variety of accessories to help pass the time. I hope to go a third time sometime soon and really appreciated the opportunities he has brought. Edit. When Dad was working in a Midwestern US state, doctors found a big spot on his lung, requiring surgery. Someone mentioned it to Dad's boss. Within an hour, boss spoke to Dad. "I've got you booked into Sloan Kettering Memorial Hospital in Mick. Your surgeon there actually wrote the book on this surgery. You and MRS. Dad are taking my plane. I'm paying for everything." Happened yesterday actually. My husband's co-worker is almost certain he lost his rental house. They aren't letting anyone pass to see their properties due to all the wildfires still raging. So this person's landlord was just talking to a random stranger about it, telling him about his 6 kids and how hard he works to support them, and this random stranger pulls out a $100 bill and says, "Can you make sure he gets this?" I will say this community is so strong and united. Tons of support is keeping all of these firefighters and police officers going. Dolly Parton is offering $1,000 a month to anyone who lost their home for 6 months. The water company will not shut off water for non-payment. And the state is letting people who lost their jobs due to businesses burning down, are letting them file their unemployment immediately. Not to mention all the shelters and animal shelters taking people in. My sister bought me McDonald's once. I'm not crying. Day of Star Wars 7 premiere, I find out I didn't respond to my CFees Club sign up email fast enough and didn't get one of the tickets to the movie. Was really angry and vented to my friend who blinked a few times then called his parents. Next thing I know I'm at his penthouse at 11 PM as they apparently have a legitimate movie theater. His dad's hobby was the reason given to me for its existence, and the two of us watch the movie eating pizza. Coolest moment ever. Never asked him for anything after though, because that kind of wealth is actually intimidating. Bill Gates is curing malaria and saving millions of poor kids. My mom won the lottery and has been blessed with a lot of money, but to this day we are the top donators to Make-A-Wish Idaho. She donates to a few other places, but Make-A-Wish is an organization we have deep emotional ties to and is a point of pride I have for my mom. Hardly Strictly Bluegrass. A free 3-day festival in San Francisco representing many different genres and artists on 5 different stages, all started by the billionaire philanthropist Hellman. Sorry, can't remember his first name. After he died he gave the city enough money to keep the festival running for the next few years. Was helping a friend landscape a mansion once. Was tamping down some loose soil in a dirt lot along their driveway. Turns out it used to be a house. They bought it, tore it down, and had grass seeds planted in its place. Not so great of a story. But upon completing high school my best friend and I were in the running for a $5,000 scholarship for university because we both had the highest number of volunteer hours recorded during school. Both over 1,000. In the end, she was 20 hours ahead of me. But she went, without me knowing, to the admin of the school and asked if they could give it to me. Because her family was really wealthy and could afford to send her to Georgetown. Whereas my single mother couldn't even afford to send me to community college. It allowed me to go to university straight out of college. What a great gift. Worked for an old rich couple. The old lady bought 2 new Mercedes every 6 months. One black and one white. Why these colors? So she can have a matching car for each of her poodles, of course. Isn't this a terrible display of wealth? Your answer doesn't fit in here. Well, I don't mean to brag, but not a big deal. But something that stuck with me. A few years ago I went to meet my uncle for a beer after work. His boss was there. I arrived last, so offered to buy a round of drinks. After that his boss wouldn't let me buy another thing all night. Turns out he was a billionaire but was waiting to see if I'd offer up front or attempt to glom off of him all night. I had no idea who he was, so turns out being polite does pay. Pretty much anything the Gates Foundation does. In particular, the programs from their Global Health division. Gates Foundation Global Health pursues simple, often non-SI programs with a focus on saving lives. Often, their programs concentrate on preventable diseases that persist in the developing world due to lack of basic health services. For example, measles-related deaths in Africa have dropped by 90% since 2000, pretty much entirely due to Gates Foundation vaccination programs. Their work on malaria, dysentery, polio and tuberculosis prevention have similarly saved millions of lives. Bill Gates is one of the great, relatively, unsung heroes of our times. One time I watched this guy become president for no reason other than his wealth. When I was a kid, my parents both worked 2 jobs to help our family. My dad had one job, a factory, making molds for big factory parts during the day. Then at night he worked as a valet for a pretty good restaurant in downtown Chicago. One night, they had a pretty well-known football player in the restaurant. I forgot who it was and would need to ask my dad. Anyway, at the end of the night he was trying to catch a cab in front of the restaurant, so my dad ran to the end of the block, which was a busier intersection, and got him a cab. He thanked my dad and tried to slip a bill in his hand. But my dad declined and said it was okay. He insisted and got into the cab, said thanks again and went off. It wasn't until after he left that my dad noticed he gave a $100 bill just for hailing a cab. That was a huge help to us at the time and something that we greatly appreciated. There is a doctor at my local hospital. He has a Batman Lambo and dresses up as Batman and visits the pediatric ward very often. He takes some of the kids that are able in rides in the Batman car. I bought 100 turkeys for the local food bank for Christmas once, had the money from a settlement, and made sure everything went to a family in need. I think his Batman wins. But either way it's awesome. Edit. This isn't the Maryland guy that everyone's seen on FB. It's another guy. Edit 2. Apparently people seem to think a single family received 100 turkeys. Not sure if trolling or dumb. But still. The turkeys were divided up between 100 homes. I am also late to the party. But whatever. Back during the Great Depression my great-grandfather was a very shrewd and calculating businessman. He was a pillar of the city he lived in and owned a number of small businesses, which, given the economic climate, was a feat in itself. At the time, he was the richest or one of the richest individuals in town. Well, while he seemed like a tough old grizzled business type, he actually had a heart of gold. One of the businesses he owned was a grocery store, and during the Depression, many couldn't afford food. He allowed his patrons to buy food on credit, but he never charged interest nor hounded people for money. Hell, he never sought to collect on the debts. Many of those who purchased food in this way never paid him back. Some did years later, but most did not. He quietly ignored the total they owed because making sure people were fed was more important than whatever money he would have made. I had the honor of knowing him before he passed away, and while he wasn't perfect, he definitely was an inspiration. J.K. Rowling has donated so much money to charities and funds that she donated her way off the world's richest people list. An old college pal, who had done quite well for himself in the city in the 9 or so years since we graduated. Said he'd pick me up from the tube station in a red car. Bear in mind this is the guy who I used to eat cheap pizzas with after a night out and buy individual cans of Coke from out of a multi-pack because he didn't have the resources to just give them away. He turned up in a Ferrari 450 and had not the slightest trace of attitude about it. I said after I got in, well, it's certainly a red car. He just smiled wryly. My dad's boss has had Obama over to visit twice during his time in office. The guy actually lives a pretty non-glamorous lifestyle. He dumps most of his money into employee parties, events and into some Alaska wildlife preservation thing. But I think paying for the president to come over is pretty rad. It isn't a huge story, but I got to know this guy who let me drive his beautiful 1957 VW Beetle convertible in a parade for him as he knew I was nuts about the car. So damn much fun. My left leg was so sore from clutching through the whole parade. Got to take it out for a little bit afterwards too. He doesn't flaunt anything but is a nice guy and loves VWs.